Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today we've got an open forum Q&A where we're going to be tackling a bunch of questions that have come in from listeners. But before we get there, first couple exciting things. The book Forged that Matt Fradd and I have been working on for guys is about to come out. It's getting shipped from the printer this week. And so we're going to be doing a raffle to give away free copies. What we want to encourage you to do, if you go over to YouTube channel, which is just youtube.com/Jason Evert. There's a link there in the show notes, and subscribe there. We're just going to be giving away free copies to a couple subscribers. Now, with YouTube, we're now posting videos every single day. So a lot of people aren't aware of how much stuff we're putting out there. So make sure to check out youtube.com/Jason Evert and subscribe. Also, in terms of Forged, I'm so excited about this book, not just because of the book, but what it is a program for guys that they do together, whether father and son, a couple guys in the dorm, and it's a 33-day journey to learn how to defend love from lust. And with each day of the book, you're going to get emailed to you on your phone, your desktop, a different 3-minute video from a different presenter every single day that's going to accompany you on this journey. We've got some amazing lay people. We got Christopher West, Chris Stefanik, Matt Fradd and I are doing it. Paul J. Kim, Jeff Cavins, Christopher. I mean, we've got a fantastic lineup. We even went outside the Catholic bubble. A guy named Jay Stringer wrote a book for guys on how to break free from pornography. He's an evangelical pastor and a counselor. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, the insights in your book were tremendous. Would you submit a video for this thing? And so on, I think day 6 is his video. We've also got some amazing priests. We have Father Mike Schmitz, Father Jacques Philippe, who's the French priest who wrote the book Searching for and Maintaining Peace. We've got Father Agostino Torres, Father Josh Johnson. We've got some amazing doctors on there, Dr. Peter Klaponis, Dr. Greg Bottaro, that are going to be tackling this from a more of a psychological perspective and a lot of mental health background there. Religious sisters, we've got Mother Miriam of the Lamb of God. We've got Sister Miriam James. I mean, it's just an amazing lineup coming at it from all these different angles to help guys become victorious in this battle. And it doesn't mean that you're addicted to pornography. It doesn't mean you're struggling this way or that way. But hey, all of us have our challenges. And so this book is geared for all guys, especially young single guys. But like I said, fathers can do it with their sons. If you want one now, you can just go to chassis.com. And the book right there is on the front, Forged. If you buy one now before we ship, we'll send you a second one for free because we only are going to be selling them in pairs because of how important we think it is for guys to do this in brotherhood and in fellowship. So make sure to check out Forge, coming out real soon. Also, the Hollow app. They're just about to come out with in a couple weeks a sleep story that they asked me to record for them. And as a public speaker, I've got a lot of experience in knowing how to put people to sleep. And so this is a little prayer app. And when you support the sponsors of our program, you help keep this ministry going. And so I'd love for every single one of our listeners to download the Hollow app. It's free for 14 days to try it out. If you click the link in the show notes, you just go to hollow.com/Lust is Boring, the name of this podcast, and then you can try out that prayer app. And it's the #1 Catholic prayer app, I think, for a reason. Check it out, and I think you'll find out why. And then today's show, we're going to be taking questions, many of whom come in from our patrons. Patreon is a website that helps support this podcast, and it's supported by the listeners. So if you want this message to be spread far and wide, you can just go to Patreon and you can pick a tier of support. Like, hey, I'll give $5 a month, or I'll give more, whatever. Then we send you free t-shirts, all kinds of free stuff, and Thanksgiving that you're helping to support this and move it forward. And so if you check out patreon.com, you can also we'll send you our personal email if you got any personal questions. If you want to submit questions to the show, you can do it on Patreon. Just message us, and then we tackle them on shows like this. And so without further ado, let's dive into some of the questions today. So question number 1. If we're supposed to love our neighbor, and that doesn't mean just the people who live next to us, but those people are bad for us, like toxic exes, friends who aren't good examples, or just annoying people in general who bring out a bad side of you, like Toby Flenderson with Michael Scott in The Office. I appreciate The Office reference, actually. A couple months ago, I was talking to a friend. I'm sorry, interrupting your question, but talking to some friend about funny scenes in The Office, and it must have been on my mind. I go to the grocery store, and I was looking for mayonnaise or something. I look at the guy at the store. I'm like, where are the turtles? The guy's like, what? I'm like, where are the turtles? And then I just kind of snapped out of it. I'm like, where's the mayonnaise? And he's like, yeah, there. We're like aisle 6, man. I'm like, Thanks. Yeah, I just kind of walked off, so a little awkward moment there. But let's jump back here. So people who don't know The Office, just disregard that. But so people bring out the bad side of you. Is there a way to love them and pray for them from afar, or do I have to interact with them still? Well, I think we got to distinguish here. The first thing is, well, what about like toxic exes? Well, if a person is toxic to your mental and emotional health, like you don't have a moral obligation to immerse yourself in their life. I mean, obviously, some of these people interactions are going to be inevitable if they're coworkers, you go to the same school or whatever, but you've also, in loving your neighbor, you also got to love yourself. And what I mean by love yourself is don't put yourself in situations that are going to be obviously damaging to your own mental health. Be charitable, be civil, but you don't need to go out of your way to get hurt over and over again by some ex who is just going to kind of hoover you back into that relationship and then discard you and leave you feeling like garbage. And so take care of yourself there. In terms of bad friends, well, a friend of mine once said that friends are like elevators. They either take you up or they take you down. And so be very selective in who you choose as your intimate companions. Now, obviously, like I said, classmates, coworkers, you're going to be around people that you don't necessarily gel with all the time, and that's fine. But in terms of distinguishing who you should draw in as closer friends and how much time you should spend with them, I do recommend the book Introduction to the Devout Life by St. Francis de Sales. He has a couple chapters in there on friendships and these type of human relationships, and he has a tremendous amount of pastoral wisdom on this subject. So make sure to check out that book, Introduction to the Devout Life by St. Francis de Sales. Now, people in general, not necessarily bad friends, because you become like your friends, and so you want to choose wisely there. But people in general, they ask about. It's going to be a part of life, right? I mean, I know a friend obviously loves his kids very much, but he calls his children the sandpaper of sanctity, meaning by that they're constantly rubbing on those rough edges. And it's difficult and it's painful because if you only surround yourself with the people who just always bring out the best in you and just bring you nothing but sunshine and lollipops and rainbows, where's the growth of virtue in that? It's easy to love people who are easily lovable. The real challenge is loving those who are difficult, and they're going to be a part of your life to some extent or another. So, but if a person is drawing you away from God, then I think we've got a moral obligation to really rethink how much time we're spending in that person's presence. Next question. Why shouldn't you live together before marriage to see if you're compatible? Well, when it comes to compatibility, I remember I used to give talks in San Diego for the engaged couples out there. And, there's maybe just room, like, I don't know, 25 couples, and you're kind of getting them ready for the sacrament. And I know a lot of them are already living together. And I said, look, I know some people live together before marriage and want to see if they're compatible. But I said, look, I can actually give you right now a compatibility test that will work with 100% precision, and you will know the results within 15 seconds. Are you willing to take this test and know if you're compatible with your spouse? And, some are like, oh, yeah. Then others look a little bit nervous. And I say, okay, here's the test. Okay, you're a woman? Okay, is he a man? Okay, you're not compatible. There you go. It's pretty much that simple. We're not compatible. There's going to be some tension. And I think someone who explained this the best was G.K. Chesterton. Listen to what he said. He said, if Americans can be divorced for incompatibility of temper, I cannot conceive why they are not all divorced. I have known many happy marriages, but never a compatible one. The whole aim of marriage is to fight through and survive the instant when incompatibility becomes unquestionable, for a man and a woman as such are incompatible. And so incompatibilities are going to bubble up to the surface in a painfully obvious way. And then we've got a choice. Okay, what am I going to do with this? Am I going to try to work on this? We're going to go to counseling together. Sometimes there's signs that, maybe there are major issues going on before the marriage that may have invalidated the marriage itself. Other times it's just human imperfections that we need to learn to work through. But what is it that really makes a marriage last? And are you going to improve your chances by cohabiting prior to marriage? Well, what makes a marriage last is the ability to be patient and sacrifice and forgive. These aren't really the skills that you pick up playing house before you get married. In fact, I think for a girl to move in with a guy who's not her husband is just flat out crazy. Now, why would I say that? Well, I mean, imagine go on one date with a guy and he's a jerk to you. Breaking up's easy. It's one date. Okay, date a guy for 6 months and break up. It's harder, but now you sleep with him. Now you move in with him, and then you realize he's not the one for you. Imagine how hard it is to let go when you've invested that much. Girls don't want to. They want to stay put and fix the guy, but the relationship is pretty much done before it has a chance to begin because they don't want to just leave after they've invested so much of their heart, their years, and we can fix this thing. We're going to make it turn around. And often they end up sliding into marriage instead of deciding into marriage. And they're also more likely to, I think, make poor marriage decisions. They think, well, no, if we're living together, I'm going to really see this person's faults and this and that. But the sexual intimacy will not only bind you, it blinds you. And this is neurologically proven. There was a study done, some Discover magazine a couple years ago, had like the top, 100 scientific discoveries of 2019 or whatever it was. And one of them was that this oxytocin, they called the cuddle hormone, right? Now, this is something that mothers release when they're breastfeeding a child. It's released during a prolonged hug, sexual intimacy. This is, apparently some neurochemical that causes bonding between individuals. But it's also released, it also increases trust between people. It also impairs your critical thinking abilities. And so they did a study where they inhaled this oxytocin cuddle hormone in people's noses and then had them engage in a game of chance where they're gambling, wasting money, investing, doing different things. And they found that the people who had taken a whiff of oxytocin prior to this experiment were far more likely to make really stupid investments and be far too trusting than they should. Be like, oh, you're a nice person. Here's all the money. And it was astonishing. People who had not been exposed to the oxytocin were much more reserved in making more prudent choices with their investment. And so how this, relates to human intimacy is that it makes us focus on so much of the good stuff and not the negative. And inside marriage, that's exactly what you need, right? But prior to marriage, when your perceptions need to be sharp, when you need to be operating with full brain capacity to make the best choice, when you're really shutting down that critical thinking part of your brain through that neurochemical, it's not the ideal recipe for clear marital discernment. And so this is why study after study have shown that people who cohabit prior to marriage have higher rates of infidelity, higher rates of domestic abuse, lower rates of marital stability. The numbers go on and on. They have not revealed any positive correlation whatsoever from the sociological data from cohabitation leading to stronger marriages. It's simply, the evidence isn't there. Next question. There's a girl I really like, but she already has a boyfriend. What should I do? Also, I found out she has LGBT friends on Instagram. Well, we'll tackle that one first. If Jesus had an Instagram, which I don't think he would, but if Jesus had Instagram, he would have LGBT friends on there. Sorry to burst your bubble, but he would. He wouldn't be like, yeah, I like the non-binary people. Like, those aren't my friends. No, I like these people over here. No, I mean, we know that Jesus would have dinner with tax collectors, prostitutes, this and that, all kinds of people, the Pharisees, the religious leaders. He wasn't like, oh, well, if you experience that, you're kind of shunned over in this little corner of Christendom. No, he would have been friends with them. So I wouldn't just discredit a girl as a potential future girlfriend if she's got friends who experience LGBT tendencies. That doesn't tell you everything you need to know about her. I mean, it could be a red flag of just like, wait a minute, she endorses all these things that are contrary to the Christian faith. Hey, that may be a red flag. Are we going to be compatible in terms of spiritually, our morals, our faith, and those things? Obviously, that could be something, but you don't want to just discredit somebody because they happen to have friends on Instagram or social media who experience different sexual attractions. The question is, okay, what type of friendship does she have with these people? Does she love them and is compassionate and calling them towards virtue? You can't tell by somebody's social media accounts. That's why I really want to encourage you, if you like somebody, don't stalk them on social media. Give them a chance to reveal themselves to you in the context of a friendship and a relationship. Because a lot of people are starting their relationship feeling like they already know somebody. Because look, I know what you did, with your family on Thanksgiving break 2 years ago, because I saw it on your Facebook or Instagram. Like, come on, let's get to know each other face to face. Now, that draws us to the first point of your question is, you really like this girl, but she already has a boyfriend. What should you do? What you should do is exactly what you would want some other guy to do if you were the one dating her right now. That is the choice that she has made, to be with that guy. You need to honor her in that. You need to honor him in that. which means having no interactions whatsoever with this person that you would not want someone else to be having with her if you were the one who happened to be dating her. In fact, if she does start flirting with you or whatever, that's a really big red flag, right? Because a person who cheats with you will cheat on you. And so how faithful are they when they're with this guy? Give her plenty of space. And if that relationship doesn't work out and you give her time, to heal or whatever from that ended relationship, you'll have shown her that, hey, I respected the decision you made. I didn't try to encroach on that, try to break you guys up so I could have you. Maintained a friendship at a distance and kept your integrity pure. And so just make sure that you're applying the golden rule here, that you're not being kind of overly playful with this girl in hopes that she'll become more attracted to you than she is to the guy that she's with right now. That's not fair for her, and it's not fair for him. Next question. How do you deal with gossip? Well, in terms of gossip, I think one of the keys is whoever gossips, a couple things. Whoever gossips to you is going to gossip about you, okay? And so keep that in mind when it comes to engaging in gossip yourself or listening to it. How do you deal with it when other people are gossiping about you? Well, one, don't give them power they don't have. And what I mean by that is don't give them the power to ruin your day because they want to run off at the mouth. If we let our days be ruined by people who we don't even love or respect on a deep level, and they're all gossiping about us, we're giving them way too much power. You should only care about the opinions of people who actually care about you. If they don't care about you, then frankly, don't invest that much in what they think about you. And obviously, yeah, it hurts, but try to take the high road. Like they go low, you go high. Basically, pray for this person. Don't try to get catty. Don't try to be like, okay, well, if you're going to do this, I'm going to spread this bad news about you. No. And we've got to realize that gossip is so full of lies. It really is. Even if there's a half-truth here and a half-truth there, it's so full of lies. But you can't get it all back. That's what hurts. It's like taking a pillowcase to the top of a skyscraper, shaking out all those feathers and just letting them go. You can never get them back. And so we need to be very discerning in the information that we share about other people. Have some prudence there. Now, this happens to you if you're the victim of it. I mean, you're in good company. Jesus Christ was gossiped about. As weird as this sounds, I would imagine the Blessed Virgin Mary herself struggled with this and experienced it. And why would I say that? Well, think about it. This is a girl who became pregnant living in a small village. I mean, Nazareth probably only had 200 or so people living in it at that time. And here's this girl that everybody thought was like this perfect teenage girl, and now she's expecting a baby. Obviously, nobody in the village would be thinking, oh, it must be the power of the Holy Spirit. They would have looked differently at Joseph. They would have looked differently at her. But she seems to have maintained a silence of trusting God. Like, God has blessed me with this life. And in the end, everybody will see. In the end, everything that is hidden will be brought to light. And in the end, the person who gossips about you in the light will end up looking far worse than you are. But we need to keep in mind, we got no place to gossip ourselves, right? I mean, I remember meeting this one girl living in New York, and they didn't call her a slut at school. They actually called her the slut at school. And these people gossip about her. Yeah, they know what she did, with guys at some party a couple weeks ago, and I know what she did as well. I mean, she shared it with me, but they don't know the full story, which is what she shared with me, that her brother died, her cousin died, her friend committed suicide, she got depressed, she started cutting herself. Obviously didn't help, she wasn't loving her body, so she slept with a guy at work. He got her pregnant, and he said, I don't want your baby, shoved her down the stairs, she had a miscarriage, lost the baby, now she's depressed and going through eating disorders. And you know who she is, my friends? Slut, right? I mean, doesn't that identify her perfectly? Nobody had a clue what she's been through. That's why I beg you, let's just take the labels off each other and give one another the freedom to start over. Next question we got here coming in. How far is too far? Well, a couple things. I mean, this is a very common question we get, like, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? We got to look at it. First off, the mentality behind this is almost like, well, if it's a mortal sin, I don't want to do it. But if it's a venial sin, I don't want to miss it. Okay, this is really the wrong attitude that we should have towards sin. If we truly love somebody, we wouldn't even ask the question, well, how far can I go before doing something really bad? Because how far too far is an incomplete sentence, isn't it? How far is too far? Too far before what? Well, too far before, too far. No, really, finish the sentence. How far is too far before I commit a mortal sin? Like, why am I even asking this question? Like, what attitude do I have? It's almost like, well, how close can I come to driving our family van to the side of that cliff without actually falling off? I mean, took the kids off-roading in my truck last weekend, and we went up into the forest and the mountains, and it was just breathtaking. I mean, the trees were blooming, the aspens were popping. I mean, it was amazing. And we're driving alongside this, dirt road up in the mountains, and, there's no guardrails up there. And, we're looking down. It's a sheer cliff down to the river down there. And, obviously as a father, I'm hugging, the far side of that, mountain trail the whole way. Why? Because of the value of who's driving with me, not the vehicle, the passenger's sitting in the back. And so if you have that love, the question is not, well, how close can I get to that edge? The question is, how far can I go to keep this thing safe? And so we need to check our hearts. Is my heart in the right place by even asking this question? That's consideration number one. Consideration number two is like, well, okay, that's helpful, but I still want to know. Like, I want to know not so how, in terms of how sinful I can get, but I want to know how to express affection in a way that's pleasing to God. Like, my relationship with God is important. I want to love this person rightly. I'm not concerned about like how close can I get to mortal sin, but I really have just never gotten the answer. Like, how far can we go? A couple of principles to lay down. First, I often say to the guys, like, you want to get married one day? And the guy like, yeah, I want to get married. I said, okay, let's say you married girl of your dreams. What's your name? He's like, oh, I'm Derek. I'm like, okay, Derek, let's say you meet the woman of your dreams. And you guys get married, you go off your honeymoon, you find out you're expecting a little baby girl, and you get back and you have this little baby girl, and you name her like Derekita or whatever, and you're in love with her. I mean, this girl is like your heart outside of your body. And you've never loved anything like this before. And you teach her how to ride a bike, you raise her up with princess bows and everything. She turns 16 years old, you get a knock at the door. And it's her date for the prom of high school. And so calmly, you cock the gun, go to the door, and there's this guy standing there, and you look over his shoulder, and he's not driving a car. This guy's got one of these like microbus Volkswagen minivan things with like a mattress in the back instead of seats. Like, okay, now how far is that guy going with your daughter that day? Typically, the guy would be like, well, she ain't going out my door that day. He ain't going anywhere. Okay, well, why would we have such a protective attitude toward the innocence of our daughters, but fail to have the same attitude towards the girls that we're dating? And so how far would I want someone to go with my daughter? Consideration number one. You shouldn't be expressing affection in such a way behind a dad's back that you wouldn't express in front of his face. And so have integrity there, because when you get married, you're going to become her man, so to speak, all right? But before she's married, her man, so to speak, I think is her father, right? And he'll walk her down the aisle to you, lift the veil, and give her to you. In that moment when she becomes your bride, you're the man or whatever. But until then, you want to honor her father, because you might not end up marrying this girl anyway. And so you may be dating someone else's future husband or future wife. And so you would want to treat them in such a way that you would want someone else to treat the person that you may be dating or that you may end up marrying as well. So that's one consideration. Another thing is like, do we have a double standard when it comes to the way we treat girls versus the way we treat like someone want to treat our sister? I remember in high school, my sister had a date, and she was the blonde-haired, blue-eyed captain of the cheerleading team, and the guys liked her. And so to try to, help her to stay away from the wrong kind of guys, one thing I would do is I would just try to compliment her. I'm like, hey, Kelly, you look really nice in that dress. Oh, your hair looks great. Your eyes are really pretty. She's actually told me she's been on dates with boys, and they've said to her, Kelly, your eyes are so beautiful. And she says, I know, my brother tells me that. And they're like, oh, I've got to think of something else here. And so I try to build her up in those ways. But I remember one day she had a date, and I was visiting back from college, and I played 3 years of college baseball. And so I remember doorbell rings, and I know it's this guy to pick her up. So nonchalantly, I just come downstairs, with my baseball bat, in my hands to meet the guy, essentially trying to send this message, like, you mess with her, I'm going to mess with you. You guard her innocence. But like, okay, but Jason, do you guard the innocence of the girls you're dating? Well, no, I'm a guy. It's different. Like, no, it's not. Double standard. Like, we can't have one standard for our future wife, for my daughter one day, for my little sister, but a completely different standard for the girls that we're happening to be dating that might be someone else's future wife, that are somebody's daughter, could be someone's sister. We've got to live with more authenticity, having that. And so people, okay, well, Jason, that's great and everything, but seriously, how far is too far? Well, to be clear, I think that passionate kissing should be reserved for marriage. Because passionate kissing, I've had girls tell me, but Jason, like, I can make out with a guy and I'm totally fine doing just that. Not going any further. But the thing is, for one, especially for a guy, passionate kissing is an arousing thing. And typically, if a guy's passionate kissing, he's not simply content, okay, we're just going to end it there. That was a nice day. His body's moving along, his passions, his desires, anticipating what is this going to lead to? And am I really going to maintain a pure relationship of hot, passionate makeout sessions for the next 10 years until we get married? The likelihood of that going the distance and maintaining purity is not likely. Gradually, over time, the thing's going to erode. So I would say try to really guard the innocence of that relationship. And instead of looking at the world and being like, well, wait a minute, my friend's doing this and that guy's going to bed with a different girl every weekend, I'm really not that bad. Hey, as Christians, we don't even look at them and say and judge our behavior based on theirs. What I want you to just step back and be like, okay, look at the saints in the church. Like Saint Teresa of Lisieux, her parents are canonized saints. How would they have dated each other? The Blessed Virgin Mary with Joseph. They, were engaged, before the angel came and all this happened. Like they had a loving teenage relationship. How, with what trembling reverence would Joseph treated Our Lady? And a lot of people are like, well, don't think about that. Joseph and Mary, no. We need to go there in contemplation because his love for Mary was not a threat to her purity. His love for Mary was exactly what safeguarded her purity. The church honors him with the title Guardian of the Virgin because he loved her so much. He wanted nothing more than lead her to heaven. And so we need to spend some time looking at true examples of holiness instead of looking at people who don't care at all about what God thinks about them and think we're better because we're living a different lifestyle. And so I would say to reserve passionate kissing for marriage and express the kind of affection that you would express in public or in front of her parents. And that might seem like a high standard, but I think you'll find that living with purity not only heals the past, but the more pure you are, the easier it is to be pure. The more you kind of sit on the fence and be like, well, I won't do that, but we'll still do this, makes it so much harder. Because the way that God has crafted our sexual passions to be is for them to be all-consuming, that once those desires are aroused, they're not really satisfied until they're fulfilled. And so by keeping them in check, it's not just about white-knuckling it all the way through and just self-denial and repression. You'll find that with greater purity comes greater freedom. And these things, you'll be able to practice this with greater ease instead of constantly teasing yourself with desires that can only be satisfied morally within the sacrament of marriage. Next question. Claire, who's one of our patrons and patron supporters, asks, you speak a lot toward the vocations of holy life and matrimony, but how common is a vocation to single life? And how do you know if it's your calling? Well, from a strictly canonical viewpoint, in terms of Catholic language, there are vocations to the priesthood and vocations to the married life. A vocation, strictly speaking in canon law, is something which you make a solemn profession of vows for, such as the priesthood or the married life. We do have the state of the consecrated singles, but the state of just being single in and of itself, strictly speaking, is not a capital V vocation. But it is, I would say, a lowercase v vocation of a calling that God does give to some people in this life. Now, this is a tough one because the thing is, like, when you get married, you're married. When you enter the priesthood, it's like, okay, I went through the vows, everything, I am officially a priest. The challenge with it, when there aren't those solemn profession of vows, it's like, okay, I know I am single, but is God calling me to singleness 8-9 years from now? Like, I don't know. This is where it's tricky. And I think where holiness is to be found in the single life is not necessarily in the absolute conviction that you know with unshakable certainty that singleness is what you'll be forever. And once you know that, then you can kind of settle in there, lock in. It's like a tenured university professor, and you're there. I think the holiness to be found in the single life is abandonment to the will of God in the present moment, because that's a cross of having sometimes achings and yearnings, not only for the married life, but I know people that yearn for the religious life and went and discerned at a community, and the community discerned, I don't feel that this is actually your vocation. It's like, ouch. Requires a lot of humility and trust in God. I'm just like, wow, I really ache for this, but it doesn't seem like that's your will for me. And you have 10 times as many people, I think, on the opposite side of the fence that just want to get married, want to have a family, want to have kids. And it's like, okay, where is the right person? They're nowhere in sight. And they're left in this kind of desert of uncertainty where it's like, God, I think my desire is pure and good and holy. Like, I want this good thing, but it doesn't seem to be happening in my timetable. And I think it was St. Maximilian Kolbe who talked about suffering with a capital W and a lowercase w, meaning capital W is God's will, lowercase is kind of our will. And when those two things don't line up and they're not equal to one another, there's suffering there. And so in the single life, there is suffering. Now, some people are tremendously content. Like, I didn't want to get married anyway, and I just feel totally at home. Hey, great. You'll experience sufferings in whatever way, we all do. But for other people, it's a tremendous cross. And so what I would try to do is try to embrace that cross each day and say, look, God, I don't know if I'm going to spend the rest of my days single. I don't know if you're going to call me home next week. I don't know if you're going to introduce me to Mr. Wonderful tomorrow. Like, I don't know. But what I do know is that I trust you. And what I do know is that you're a loving Father. And I'm going to place all my trust in my trust of you. And so I think by doing that, it allows us to live in the present moment, because we don't know if we have tomorrow. I mean, you look at some of the young blesseds in the church, like Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati, and, he wanted to pursue this woman towards marriage, but her parents, or I guess her family, was from a higher class than he was, and they didn't approve of it. And that was a cause of suffering for him. But he learned that one of the most beautiful forms of affection is friendship. And so he didn't force the hand there. He didn't try to say, I don't care what your parents think, we're going to do this anyway. He trusted God. And, God ended up taking him home to heaven when the guy was only 24 years old. He's, God willing, going to be a canonized saint in the Catholic Church one day. If you're not familiar with this guy, Google this guy. Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati. Guy's a tournament skier, mountain climber. He looks like an Abercrombie and Filth model. I mean, just this man's man, smoking stogies and hiking in the woods. He would go to the billiards to play pool with different people in town. And he'd say, look, okay, here's the deal. If you beat me at pool, I'll give you money. But if I beat you at pool, you have to come with me to Eucharistic adoration. And so he would wipe the floor with these people playing pool, beat them all, and then bring crowds of young people to Eucharistic adoration. He eventually contracted an illness from the poor people that he was taking care of, and he passed away. And even on his deathbed, he was kind of scrawling on a piece of paper, hey, this is the bus ticket for that guy, and make sure this guy gets his medicine and this guy gets his food. Like, guy's 24 years old. And he could have been lying on his deathbed, wallowing in self-pity of just like, oh, all my years were before me and they were lost. But no, he's still thinking of others. And I think that's perhaps what gave him such joy, that he wasn't always navel-gazing. He was always looking out. And so, granted, singleness can be a cause of suffering. And you don't want to just whiten up, I don't care if I suffer, I'm not going to talk to anybody about it. You want to be able to express that to God and to other people. But at the end of the day, to make sure that you're looking outward, that this time of singleness has been given to you by God. Whether it's going to last another day, another week, another decade, we don't know. But what we know is this is a unique opportunity to serve God in a way that you can't in the married life, or sometimes even in the priesthood and the religious life. There's a unique opportunity that God is offering you today to serve him. Say a big old yes to God today and entrust the future entirely to him. Next question. This is the last one we've got here. What about men who withdraw from a relationship? I mean, today we're happy, having superb communication, and then out of nowhere, he doesn't call, he doesn't text. In my experience, when I ask him what's the matter, he says nothing's wrong, that he has a lot on his mind. How can women deal with this? Often we'll think that he's cheating or he wants out of the relationship. Well, a couple things to look at here. One, I want you to look at his past, your past together. Now, why I say that? Look at his past. Does this guy have a history of flip-flopping on girls? Where like 1 minute he's professing his undying love and the next minute you don't even know what zip code the guy's in. Like, has he done this before? Does he have a pattern of unstable, broken relationships? Well, if so, you're probably onto something here, that he might lack the maturity for an emotionally stable relationship. He's more labile, where he has almost a childish, attention span when it comes to relationships, that like, oh, it's up here and then it's down there. Okay, is he really in love with you, or is he just in love with the feeling of being around you when that feeling is in him? If that's the case, you got to guard your heart and pull back. But let's say his past isn't like that. Let's say, well, no, he's had a couple relationships before, but they seem pretty stable. Well, maybe he does have a lot on his mind. And so you might want to look at question number 2. Look at your past. Have you gotten burned in the past? Have you been with guys that, seem like they were all there, and then turns out the guy's cheating on you. Turns out he's flirting with some other girl, or he just disappears and ghosts you and falls off the face of the earth. And if you've suffered through those experiences in the past, you're more likely to project those upon current relationships because that's your emotional memory. Like, hey, I've been through this. I see some red flags. This might be happening right now. Now, if you haven't gone through those things and you're still feeling these things, then you could be onto something. And so what do? Look at the past of your relationship with him. Has he been doing this for a long time? Have you talked to him about this? Like, honey, it really makes me feel anxious, when you kind of go dark on me, and so it makes me wonder what you're thinking. When you present this information to him, I recommend you say to him, honey, there's something that's been weighing on my heart. Can I talk to you about it? Odds are he'll be like, yeah, well, what's going on? And you could say, and when you present this to him, try to treat him not like he's the problem. Try to treat him like he's the solution. Even if he is the problem, guys like to be treated like they're the solution. And so play to that and be like, hey, there are times that when I'm in a relationship, I just feel really anxious, and it would be so big for me and so helpful to me if at these times you could, communicate with me. And I think would make him realize, okay, I'm needed for a task here. She's not wagging her finger in my face. She's not blaming me. She's just calling me to love her better. And this is how I can do it. Guys like to have those specifics, to know how they can love you rightly. Now, challenges, he might actually be fading. He might actually be like, oh, okay, well, thanks, I'll try to do that. But if this persists, and he's on the radar, off the radar, you got to have that frank conversation with him. Like, look, I just need you to make up your mind and be transparent with me. Like, where are we going in this relationship? Because you don't need to be wandering around, like I say, like Moses wandering in the wilderness with the Egyptians or the Israelites for 40 years. Like, you don't need to go through that. You don't need to put your own heart through that. You deserve clarity. And yeah, relationships need time to breathe, right? I mean, there's going to be a time of exhaling and inhaling. That is natural. It's healthy. And if any time the relationship starts to exhale a little bit, we try to freak out and grab onto it, maybe there's something in us that needs to lighten up a little bit. But every relationship is unique. That's why there can't be some simple cookie cutter answer of exactly what to do. But all good relationships have open and honest communication. So talk to him. Bring your concerns to the surface. And if he doesn't respect them and he doesn't take them seriously and he doesn't really follow through, that's the red flag that you're looking for. Can he listen to you? Do your concerns matter to him? Or does he simply invalidate your feelings and simply write them off? Oh, you're oversensitive. Hey, that's a red flag. Can this guy actually receive you? Hear the words that you're saying, perhaps relay them back to you, and do something about this to make the relationship better. Hey, if it goes down here, you have a good conversation, things move up here, that's a massive, massive green light of like, hey, this guy can learn, he can absorb, and we can grow as a couple through our tough times. And so this could be a real blessing in your relationship to really bring to the light. Do we have what it takes in terms of communication skills to grow this relationship? Or does anytime we hit a roadblock, he just stonewalls me and disappears or blame shifts or gaslights me or whatever? To pay close attention right now, because it could be really an indication of the future of the relationship. And to help you discern this, we have a free ebook I want you to check out. It's called 10 Guys You're Better Off Without. Years ago, Crystal and I wrote the book, How to Find Your Soulmate Without Losing Your Soul. And the first chapter in there was the top 10 guys to avoid. So what we did is we adapted that chapter, tightened it up a little bit, and turned it into a free ebook. And so the ways to get it, you can either click the link in the show notes, or you can go to chastity.com/10guys, the number 10 and the word guys. And if you're a guy, get it too. Read this thing. Make sure you're not one of these 10 guys yourself. And in the future, if you got questions, please go ahead, become a supporter on Patreon, submit your questions to us, and we'll answer them here on the show. And that the support on Patreon is huge for our family, for our ministry. It's a tremendous way, especially with the new year coming up. You want to make a gift, it'd be a huge way to support us and help us to reach so many more people with this message. But in the meantime, don't forget to check out the Forged book. It is coming out for guys. It ships from the printer this week. So just go to chastity.com. You'll see the book right there. And be assured of my prayers, and please keep us in your prayers as well. God bless.